one of the things that we've seen, and Elaine's got like a nifty little chart here that we just drew up. Since the peak of the market, and let's call that like February 2022, all the way over here, we saw prices take some pretty steady declines. We got hit pretty badly with a lot of price reductions and lower inventories and all that other. Buyer activity was lower. Until and we were calling this like back in sort of December, January, was that if the BOC leveled out its interest rates, that we were going to see a lot of pressure coming to the market with buyers who hadn't bought for the last year. There was nothing to buy, and they were nervous about interest rates. So we actually did call it, and I think there's probably some video evidence.
Yes, there is.
And we could flash back to that right now of us actually saying, listen, end of February, beginning of March, we're going to see a resurgence in price. And the right time to probably buy real estate was January, February, if you could find what you're looking for. And so we've got like this little chart of David's here, where we've got like our inventory that you can see sort of, we've always been a little choked with inventory, at least for the last decade. But we've seen over the last year, we've seen a pretty significant reduction in the number of homes that are for sale, further making the problem even worse. So we're down 40%. And so this got me sort of thinking is like, okay, what's represented in that 40% class, in that like top bit, or that top like almost half? What's missing? And so I started going through the listings that have been coming on the market and selling, and I came up with this easy to read chart. So basically, like at the top, like up here, this 40% is missing. It's just not there. And so what we know and what we've seen is like the houses that need to sell are coming on the market. Lots of power of attorney. Also estate sales, like if somebody's passed away or they've become otherwise incapacitated, moved out of the home, those properties have been coming onto the market. Typically, they're not extremely well presented. Then we've got like the people that have to sell, represented by like divorces, job relocations, or some financial strain. Let's say you bought an income property and it's no longer producing income because your mortgage just doubled, for example. So those properties have come on the market. Again, not always the best presented properties, because the sellers are probably in some sort of position where they don't have the capital maybe to make the improvements necessary. Then we've got this third one, which is like, they're on busy roads, they're in bad areas, then maybe they are overpriced and the people just like haven't come to the realization that their house isn't worth what they think it is. So you've got that sort of like 3/4 of what's been on the market has fallen into that particular category. And then this last sort of 25%, which used to be represented by like 65% of the listings, because now that 65 is made down to 25%. We've got this whole missing asset class of people who don't have to sell. And so they haven't been coming to the market. And so now those buyers, like 90% of the buyers that would be serviced by this are now being pressed into this very small sort of 25%. And that's a huge number of people that want this. And to be honest with you, this is what I think is like, this is the saving grace for the real estate market, is that it has been propped up by demand.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so what we're seeing now, where just recently on the radio, I heard them say that housing prices are still down by 8%. And I say, sure. Now go and put an offer in on a house that falls in this upper category of like, it's in a good area, it's well presented, it's got three bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a parking spot, not on a busy road, and it's been staged and prepared and photographed and professionally done. Tell me that house is selling for 8% less now than it was a year ago.
Yeah. Just like most statistics, right? They can be skewed. So down 9% is most of that is the product that, like you're saying, is, you know, houses, estate sales, houses that are run down, bad areas. Those are the ones that are selling because they're the only ones on the market. So the majority of the houses that are selling are those. So they're going to be down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, case in point is, the recent sale that we just did at 4 Brownlee. When we presented that home as a beat up rental,
Yeah.
we didn't get any offers. There was nothing. We hardly got any showings. But the moment we went in there, painted it, fixed it up, and staged it, sold it in a week with multiples.
Yeah.
So it is sort of the moral of the story is like, don't fall in this bottom 3 categories. Make sure you're up in this top category. And
Well, I think
rewards.
that's the message to people who are potential sellers, who maybe they don't have to move out of necessity, but maybe they want to upsize. Now, if your house is presented properly, prepared, and priced well, you're going to do well.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's going to take some time for sellers to realize that, but we're seeing it every day.
Yeah, and that's, I think, something that that we don't see a lot of is media sources interviewing real estate agents. I don't see enough of that. Is like, what do you see and what's happening in the market? There's some lighter stuff on like City TV. They do some,
Yeah.
they got our boy Al Sinclair showing up there and talking about it. But like last I checked, I don't think that guy actively sells anymore either. So what's your
Yeah, we
source?
always talk about the lag of the mainstream media, right? And the leading indicators that we're seeing.
Yeah.
They've talked a lot about the lack of inventory in those, I think it's called Hot Property or something on City TV. But in terms of that number of the average price is down, but they don't make the distinction that, okay, this is the average price, and then talking to a realtor, what do you think that is happening really in the market? Because buyers are still struggling to get a home they like, and they're competing in multiples and losing out on a lot of houses, and there's a lot of frustration involved, and so it doesn't seem like it's a buyer's market at all.
No, it's not a. It's a seller's. This is a total seller's
It's a
market.
seller's market.
And I tell you, if you're in like East York, the beaches, Leslieville, Riverdale, out in the West End, like it is everywhere. Multiple offers, and there are agents, like good agents that I talk to, that are telling me the exact same thing. Like, we got beat up last night. I thought we had a competitive offer, and we got beat up.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, so it's not just us. David, what's going on? You got some buyers that actually were the highest offer, and the sellers didn't accept.
Yeah, a little bit frustrating. And I think it was a fair offer based on comparables. I think maybe the seller maybe initially potentially got some bad advice from the agent. As we know, some agents tend to inflate that price in order to win the listing. And then when reality came, there was 4 offers, and we were the highest. They signed back, but there was still a gap there to get the deal done. So,
Right. So what's your advice if you were on the, let's say that you were on the other side of the table, you weren't representing the buyer, but you were representing the seller in this case, and there's a $100,000 gap. What's your advice?
I mean, initially, I would hope to not put myself in that position because I think the number,
Let's say that you
the
did.
number that
Yeah.
I believe she explained to the seller that she could get to set her expectations was not reasonable based on the.
So let's assume that
comparables.
that's not the case. Let's assume that you believe that the property is worth 1.4.
Yeah.
And the only offers that showed up are just over 1.3. What's your advice to your seller?
I think the market's telling you what the house is worth. 4 offers, 2 weeks on market. They were initially listed close to asking.
Yeah.
They did a week, nothing. Then they undervalued it and listed again and held back for a week.
Okay.
Another full week. So 2 weeks on market, 4 offers. We're the highest one. I think the market at that point is speaking to you.
I would agree. The market rate now is speaking to you. Is waiting a good option to get that 1.4?
Probably.
I mean, depending on the situation for the seller, if they're not in a rush or
Yeah.
they're
I do think
for-
I do think prices are starting to trickle up, but again, it's the supply and demand issue. So
Yeah.
if we see more houses come to the market, which some people think is going to happen, then maybe that balances it out a bit.
Okay. So while David and I are playing around in the kiddie pool over here at like 1.4 to 1.5 sort of range,
And that's a super competitive space too.
super competitive
Right,
space.
a lot of
Elaine's been in the deep end of the pool over in Rosedale here. What's happening in that market? Like, are those houses selling in the $4 to $6 million range?
they're taking longer to sell. And I'm finding that there's a lot of houses that are not perfect too. So the ones that are really nice are higher. They're like $6-7 million. That does take some more time. $4 to $5 million. Then a lot of them, like, it's not like they need to be renovated, but they're not super updated or modern.
Okay.
So
But that product is also seeing a supply issue right now, that we're not seeing a lot of product on the market, even though it is taking longer for what is there to sell. There's not a lot to
Yeah.
choose from.
I would say, I mean, in all of CO9, there is, as of today, 25 listings.
And how many homes are in that market? Thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is still what we would consider to be relatively low inventory. That price point typically does take a little bit longer to sell. There are, like, the really good homes will still pop off in a couple of days.
Yeah. There's a few price reductions, and you can tell which sellers are kind of feeling the pressure to sell. So they're reducing by like $200,000.
I've seen $1 million price reductions.
Yeah.
Super fun to watch.
I haven't seen that yet, but
Can you imagine how that conversation goes with your wife, where you're like, all right, we're going to do a price reduction. Like, what's an acceptable amount here? Like $1 million?
but what do you think would be the starting point in that? Like, because there is the highest price now in Rosedale is 60 million, I think 16.9, if
Yeah.
I remember correctly, which is the heritage home, really nicely done. They renovated the home. But it's $16 million. That
still,
could be
yeah.
15, it could be 17.
There's quite a bit of sort of, and it's difficult, I will say, if you're pricing, talking about like accurate pricing and doing our job as real estate agents, like if you're pricing a home that's in the sort of like $800,000 range, you can get that pretty close. Like you can get pretty tight, like $10,000 to $15,000 sort of give or take. You start pricing like a 1.5 to 1.7 million dollar home. That sort of your ability, you kind of like, and so as you start going up the spectrum, it gets more difficult to sort of price what that home is going to be. And you also have to think, like, if you're pricing a $1.5 million house, you could price it at $1,099,000 or $1,199,000 or something like that. You can price it low and then allow all of those buyers to come onto that listing and press the price to its market value. But if you're selling a $7 or $8 million house, you're only really going to have one or maybe two buyers that are going to be interested during that listing period. So it's actually, you have to price it accurately or just even a little bit above, which makes it a lot more critical to get that pricing just right. Whereas like now what we're seeing, like every house is $999, $999. And this is like the easiest job in the world. Put it at $999.
The amount of CMAs I'm doing a day is,
Yeah, you're the CMA expert now,
and
right?
and there's not a lot to draw off too, right? Because there hasn't been as many sales, so you really got to dig in to try to figure out what. And I just call the agents and say,
What do you want?
"What do you want?" Or if they're tight-lipped, what comparables are you looking at?
And that one thing that we didn't talk about was like, okay, there's 90% of the people are fighting for 25% of the listings. However, we've had a year of pent-up buyer demand, where people haven't been actively buying because of the rising interest rates.
Yeah.
And so now we have like that 90% of the people that want that is actually bigger than it's ever been. And they just opened up all, like not even a year ago, they opened up all of the immigration and all the other sort of stuff. Like all of that's flooding in as well.
Yeah.
So, this demand is going to flow pretty hard and fast. The question is, when is that going to start affecting the condo market? Any guesses? September? You think
Yeah.
by September, I think we're going to start to see condo market seeing a pretty steady increase. If I was going to buy a condo, I'd be wanting to do it before August. Like the summertime would be, I think, a really sweet time to pick something up. Wait until the hottest days of summer and get out there and pick something up that's been listed since June.